Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today, because it is a holiday weekend, I have prepared a review of two talks that I did earlier in the year on Jupiter's entrance into Aries. So, in the first talk that you guys are getting today, we are going to be going back over the archetypal combinations of Jupiter in Aries historically. So you're going to see some of the themes to watch for within the collective. And this is just a way of kind of refreshing on some of the most powerful themes of Jupiter into Aries, which Jupiter just re-entered Aries this week, as you guys remember, right around the solstice. But it's a way of looking at the Jupiter into Aries themes as they have been expressing themselves collectively. So you'll see that in part one. Part two today is a talk that my wife Ashley and I did on some of the major archetypal themes of Jupiter into Aries and looking at some of the plant teachers that you can work with as Jupiter is into Aries. So since Jupiter is moving back into Aries, this is a great talk to look at from the standpoint of understanding, what kind of plant allies you might want to work with given the energetic expression of Jupiter into Aries. So hope you will enjoy both of these talks today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments, share your insights as we go along. It helps the channel to grow. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. As you know, we are also in Kickstarter mode right now. We are trying to gain the support of 1,608 backers by the new year. We're getting closer to that goal, but as we're coming down to it now, we have just a little over a week left to go. And we really need the support of everyone we can get, as close as we can get to 1,608 backers, hopefully more. When you support the channel, you're supporting me, my staff, the production of content, and a lot of time and energy that goes in 5 days a week to making all of this. It's part of how I earn my living. It's also how I pay my staff that helps. And we're trying to do something really great this year, which is to build an affordable reading service so that we have a service where people can come in and get an affordable reading from some of our best students. And we are trying to raise some of the funds we use will be capital to get this whole thing started because it's a lot of work to get it all into place. So when you pitch in this year, you're helping the channel, you're helping a lot of good things that we're building as well. When you donate, you can find the link to donate in the description of this video or the comments section. You can pick a reward when you donate as well. You go to the Kickstarter page, $5, $10, $20. Everything really helps. We deeply appreciate it. We're really trying to push hard here at the end to meet our goal. We need a big effort here in the last week to get there. When you go, you can pick a reward too. So when you link over to the Kickstarter, again, you can find it in the comments section of this video. Pick a reward when you donate. And one of the rewards that we have is the upcoming program that my wife and I are leading called Roots and Spheres. So if you like the second video that I'm publishing today, which is a review of some of the major archetypal energies of Jupiter into Aries and plants that you can work with to deepen your connection to that energy. If you like that kind of thing, check out the Roots and Spheres program that we are offering. Roots and Spheres is a moon circle gathering that starts on January 19th in the new year. We meet before new and full moons. We study the astrology of every lunation cycle, and we pair it with plants that we are all going to be dieting together for the sake of growth, healing, and transformation. So this is a way for us of looking at each moon cycle of the year from the standpoint of doing intentional healing and growth work, trying to pair the energies of the planets with plant teachers. You can learn all about the program if you go to my website, which is nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, and go to Roots and Spheres at the bottom. Again, we start on the 19th. All of the classes are recorded if you can't make them live. The moon circle schedule is all listed there. We have everything recorded for you so you can keep it. We have a guide on all of the herbs and plants we're working with. So they are plants that are safe for anyone. So check it out. We hope that you will join us. And don't forget also that you can pick up this class through the Kickstarter. So if you link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video or the comments section, one of the rewards is this class is on sale. Several $100s off if you want to join using the Kickstarter as choose that as your reward. You can also bundle my programs together if you wanted to bundle several of them together. If you get a 4-class pass, which could include Roots and Spheres, the Masterclass series, Year 1, Year 2, Horary, Readings and Passages. I have 6 different programs. You could bundle any 4 of them together through the 4-class pass. And you can save up to 75% off on the classes when you get that 4-class bundle. So Those are the great things that we're offering. Hope to see some of you in the Roots and Spheres program in January. Thank you guys so much to everyone who's supported us so far. I hope you will enjoy these two videos that we're publishing today. One, again, on the archetypal, the kind of collective mundane expression of Jupiter into Aries in history. And then the second one on the archetypal energies of Jupiter into Aries and plant teachers that you could work with as that transit proceeds from now until May. So I hope you guys are having a great weekend, that you will have a wonderful Christmas if you are celebrating. We'll do the Tao Te Ching for astrologers tomorrow as well. Otherwise, we'll see you after the weekend. Take it easy, everyone. Bye. Hey, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today, we are going to take a look at Jupiter's upcoming ingress into the sign of Aries. This is a big change for Jupiter. Jupiter's been in Pisces and still has a ways to go in the sign of Pisces later this year. But this is a major transit for the year. And one of the ones that I have circled, obviously, as one of the bigger astrological highlights of 2022 overall, especially this early on in the month of May, because not only will Jupiter ingress into Aries, but then Mars enters Aries, and the two get into this conjunction toward the end of the month that is very powerful. We'll be visiting that separately. The point of today's video is to just take a look at Jupiter into Aries and give you the timeline for it, and also go backward in time and visit some of the previous eras that we've had, last two eras of Jupiter in Aries. And I'm going to share with you some biographical, journaling that has worked for me, and share some stories like that. Also, something you could take away and do to get a feel for what this transit might be like. We'll also look at some of the collective events that have happened that, broadly speaking, get at some of the themes that Jupiter in Aries tends to bring up. I'm not like, Richard Tarnas level historian or anything, but we can definitely see some themes in terms of what kinds of events popped up in, say, 2010 and 11, and going all the way back. If we go all the way back in time to the previous cycle, you're looking at, 1999 into 2000 was the other one. So at any rate, that's what we're going to do today. All right, well, let's talk about it. Jupiter enters Aries on May 10th, 2022. It's coming up quickly. Let's take a look at the real-time clock and get a feel for the transit. So here is the... here we go. I'm going to move this forward just a little bit, and you're going to see, I'm just going to go by hours just so you can see the actual ingress. It's about 7:33 p.m. New York Eastern Time, May 10th. I always set it to Eastern Time because usually Eastern Time is a pretty easy standard for people all over the world to convert. So people sometimes ask, why do you set it to New York and not Minneapolis? Because people are watching all over the world when they watch this, and Eastern Time, New York City is pretty standard for everyone to convert. So that's why I use it. But 7 in the evening, May 10th, Jupiter ingresses into the sign of Aries. And you're going to see what's so interesting about this transit is that shortly after, if we take this forward a little bit longer into the end of May, you'll notice that Mars has also entered the sign of Aries. And we have this big conjunction between the two of them, right around the 28th into the 29th, depending on, if you go down to the minute or not. So that's a really powerful transit with Mars and Jupiter that we'll also be studying this month. So yeah, there we go. By the way, if my voice sounds froggy, it's because I'm still getting over a cold. In fact, I was like, wow, this is really bizarre that I'm still getting over a cold. It's just like lingering and won't go away. And it was honestly the most mild cold I've had in a very long time. Nothing to write home about, but it just wouldn't go away. And I was like, I better take a COVID test. Nope, it was positive. So I am currently quarantined in my home. Thankfully, my kids and my wife, as of right now, have not gotten sick, and we're going on 2 or 3 days of them testing negative and not getting sick, and me basically spending a lot of time by myself. So anyway, I'm just hoping, and first of all, I feel really lucky that I feel very fortunate that I didn't get really, really bad symptoms. Like, I happen to have what feels to me like a very mild cold. So I can work, I can do everything. I've been able to work out even. It's really not been that bad. But not everyone's been as fortunate. I think my mom's partner was in the ICU, like on a ventilator or whatever, just a year ago. And my mom was like, my mom and dad got completely leveled by it at one point. So I'm feeling very fortunate. And I'm saying this also because people are like, you've been kind of sick for a while. I'm like, yeah, well, I just found out why. And the weird thing is that um, my kids and wife had a cold last week, or it was like 10 days ago or something. And then when I got sick, I thought, well, I just picked up what they had and they all tested negative. So I just kind of just spaced and was like, yeah, I'm sure because they tested negative and I probably have what they had that I'm, I wouldn't have COVID. But anyway, so I appreciate everyone asking and sending, thoughts and prayers. I mentioned it on Instagram, so I've been receiving a lot of messages and just wanted to take a moment to say thanks for that. What the reason I mentioned that's so interesting is that the last time that Jupiter entered Aries in my life back in 2010, I also got really sick. And Jupiter's at the very final degrees of Pisces about to push into Aries. And weirdly, in 2010, when that happened, I got super, super sick. Not like this. This is pretty mild, but anyway, it was just a weird parallel because Jupiter's about to also enter my 12th house, and things have this weird way of repeating in cycles. So I was just also paying attention to that and thinking that was interesting. And that is part of what I want to do today, is also teach you a little bit how to track these transits historically. So here are the periods. First of all, let's look at the periods where Jupiter's going to be in Aries this year. So you have Jupiter in Aries from May 10th to October 28th, 2022. That's our first chunk. And then retrogrades into Pisces, comes back into Aries December 20th, 2022, and stays there till May 16th, 2023. So as we're looking at these periods, our first big one here is between May 10th and October 28th. And that's when we can really expect to be working with this energy of Jupiter in Aries. But what I recommend at this stage, we're going to do several more videos on Jupiter entering Aries, but what I recommend at this stage to warm yourself up is to look at the previous Jupiter in Aries periods and notice what was happening in your life. So I'm going to give you some examples, both collectively and personally, that can demonstrate the way that transit tracking biographically works. And I think it's a very effective way. I teach all my students about this, of anticipating what kinds of energies and themes might come back up again. So previous Jupiter in Aries periods. Let's look back to the most recent two. Okay, so one was between June of 2010 and September of 2010, and then again January 2011 to June of 2011. So if you go back in time in your life and just broadly take note of what themes were prevalent at that time, what were you concerned with? What were you worried about? What were you joyful about? What kinds of challenges were existing in your life? What kinds of new things were getting started? What were the ups and downs and highlights of those periods? And just note them, right? And then if you know the whole sign house location of Aries, we'll be doing a horoscope for Jupiter entering Aries later. But for now, if you know the whole sign house that Aries is located in, then you can also note the potential connection of those themes and topics being prevalent with Jupiter and Aries in that whole sign house. So that's how I would recommend doing it. Now let's look, if we go back to June to September 2010 and January to June 2011, there are some events in the collective. And again, the point of this is not necessarily to make any mundane predictions. It's just to give you a feeling for notable events that were expressive of Jupiter and Aries from that time. Now, these are sort of USA centric, the prisoner of circumstance here. I'm just, notable things that I can remember during this time that really caught my eye when I did some research. So forgive me, because there's certainly a bigger world than just, the United States. And if anyone has any other really interesting events to share, please leave those in the comment section, because you'll illuminate and enlighten all of us beyond, my limitations. So one of the things that happened between those periods when Jupiter entered Aries, for example, was the first 24-hour flight by a solar-powered airplane. So the theme of things that are pioneering, that that are very inceptional, start something new. Jupiter is in the early spring sign of Aries, a Mars ruled sign. So it's very expansive, entrepreneurial, pioneering, risk-taking, assertive. Let's do something. Let's, take strong actions, break barriers with a kind of, boldness and even a kind of machismo sometimes at its worst. Also, remember that Jupiter is moving into a sign that exalts the sun. When Jupiter, the planet that is related to not only religion but also the law, enters the sign that exalts the sun, you sometimes see these referendums on authority figures, or you'll see, for example, in 2000 and in 2010 and 11, there were major WikiLeaks dumps that happened that brought up ethical concerns about Guantanamo Bay, the war in Afghanistan, and things like that. Not only that, but in 2011, in early 2011, there was the Arab Spring. I don't know if you remember that, but there was a Tunisian, if I'm saying the country correctly, street vendor who, in protest to what restrictions that were oppressive that he was dealing with, like set himself on fire as a demonstration, and then that sparked a series of protests and revolutionary activity and violence all across the Middle East. That was broadly called the Arab Spring, which in turn inspired the Occupy Wall Street movement in the United States. There's another period, one of these periods, and I forget which one, it might have been in the 90s, where Rage Against the Machine also shut down Wall Street by performing out in front of it. So it's really interesting the way that there are like challenges to authority figures, or the questions about law and authority, law and government, because Jupiter represents law and order, and that could be religious, philosophical, ethical, moral. All of those things are reflected by Jupiter. When it goes into Aries, you'll see contention or challenge to authority, or to authority figures or institutions of authority that come up around what's ethical or not. So whether you are someone who loves the kind of thing that WikiLeaks does or you abhor it is not my point today. It's just, this archetypally fits the bill, that things like the major dumps from WikiLeaks were happening. The Arab Spring happened, which fueled Occupy Wall Street. Osama bin Laden was killed. That happened. So a major moments of like military pride and sort of victory and things like that. This is the way it was touted, of course, here in the United States, is we killed this bad guy, And so this is very Jupiter and Aries. The other thing I think is really interesting is it's not always what happens while Jupiter is in Aries, but what's being seeded. So, for example, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings that didn't happen until I think it was early 2012. They actually were precipitated by the young man, his name was Adam Lanza, and his mental health crisis, his sort of, in the biographical background of what led to that shooting, people cited the very periods where Jupiter had entered Aries, and he started expressing the desire when he graduated high school to join the military, and was having major mental health crises that were starting to suggest that he was feeling like a failure and wanted to compensate for that at school by taking up more violent tendencies, especially the desire to join the military. I think it's worth mentioning, because the reason I mention is because that would lead to one of the deadliest school shootings in American history, but also because the combination of violence and school. Jupiter is associated with institutions of education, and you have Mars associated with violence. You go back to the previous period, and we're going to see that there's another instance of school violence that was defining of conversations politically, socially, and culturally around gun control, school violence, etc. Anyway, it's just interesting to note that shooter's mental health crisis and inclination toward military, guns, etc., all started happening while Jupiter was in Aries, and he was about to graduate high school. Anyway, I know that's kind of heavy, but it's these are the Jupiter in Aries. One of the reasons I mention this is to illustrate the fact that Jupiter in Aries is not just about what it brings, it's about the seed that it starts planting. Aries, as that early spring sign, is often about, what intentions start growing, what new things are coming about, but oftentimes you don't see the final result of things that happen in Aries for a while. It's at the beginning of a 3-part series in terms of the zodiac, which concludes, a whole season zodiacally. So cardinal signs are like that in general, tropical signs. So just keep that in mind, that there's things that are seated. Now that's a terrible example of something that's seated, but there are also many things that are seated that are quite positive. For example, go back to Instagram launching. Now, I've happened to be very thankful for Instagram because I really wouldn't have a business without it. So you may love or hate Instagram, and I totally get that there's different opinions about something like Instagram or social media, but that was something that just was getting started while Jupiter was in Aries. So things can get started that reflect that entrepreneurial spirit, or sometimes that, that inclination toward violence, like big violence. So it's just interesting to see the full lay of the land when you start studying transits historically and noticing the themes. And and I'm sort of it's easy for me to sit and pull out things, but I'm not trying to say this is a comprehensive list of the defining moments. They're just examples. So if you have examples too, please share. Now, after I do this, what I always do is I sit down and I look at my own biography. So what was happening in 2010 for me? Now, Aries is in my 12th house. That can be a very difficult place. It was called a place, all of the cadent houses were called metacosmios, which means they tend to be about liminal or transitional spaces. And the 12th house is often about difficult transitions. For example, the 12th house is associated with the labor pains that women go through before birthing a child. But nonetheless, the idea with the 12th house is usually that there's going to be a difficult gestational periods. They may lead to very positive things, and Jupiter can bring good things out of them, especially because Jupiter tends to be a little bit more benefic, but you are still dealing with the nature of the 12th house. Well, in 2010, during a 12th house year, I left my job as a social worker, started working at a yoga studio, which was then served an eviction notice as I was the manager at the front desk. And then I was suddenly unemployed. So I was in between worlds, not like, this was a sudden, unexpected twist of fate. I got very, very sick. Interestingly, right at those final degrees, like I'm getting sick now. So it's just really interesting that you see some parallels. Hopefully I'm not going to lose my job, but since it's my own gig, I guess less likely. I never know. But anyway, so I was unemployed, I got sick, and then I started my astrology business. So this very difficult transitional period came about where I left my job, started a new job. The new job fell apart. Suddenly I was unemployed, got sick, and then started my astrology business all right in a row. In 2011, when it came back, I was sick again at the start of the year as Jupiter ingressed into Aries. Right as it did so, I got sick again. But I also ended up working with my wife on a yoga retreat for the first time. And that seeding moment would become the beginning of our marriage eventually, and also the beginning of our yoga studio and everything we've done together for 12 years. So pretty powerful time. All right. Well, the importance of that is, again, just to understand, like, that's a 12th house. For me, that was 12th house Jupiter. So Jupiter can bring some good stuff into the 12th house. It's not out of the question. It was a transitional period that was very fruitful, but also very challenging and uncertain. Where is it in your chart? Look back to those periods and see what was going on, and see by whole sign house if you can identify any of the patterns. That gives you some hints about the period you're going into next. Do I know what's going to happen next? No, but I can already see some parallels. I'm getting sick, and my wife and I are cooking up some new things that we're hoping to do together in the next year as she's coming off a sabbatical. One of the things we've been wanting to do for a long time, but children and moving and all sorts of other things have come first, has been to cultivate our astrology and herbal medicine offerings together. Because as you guys saw last week, she's amazing. It's really fun to work with her. So it's interesting that another opportunity for collaboration is arising. Interesting. Aries happens to land in her 10th house of career. Well, the period prior to that was February of 1999 to June of 1999, and then again October of 1999 to February of 2000. So you had two periods between 99 and 2000 when Jupiter was in Aries prior to that. What was happening in the collective? Well, some really similar events. First of all, when it comes to challenges to authority figures, morality, legality, etc., Bill Clinton was impeached. The other thing that happened was the space shuttle Discovery docked to the International Space Station. It was a major moment of scientific, technological, space exploration, movement. You had a big moment of progress, is what I'm trying to say, and also the idea that there is like pioneering qualities, starting things that have, this is the first step in many like that. The transition from Pisces to Aries is like that. There's a lot of dreaming and hoping and wishing, and then there's implementing first steps when Jupiter enters Aries. You see that. However, the same theme around violence in places of, education, the Columbine shooting happened when Jupiter entered Aries. So some similar themes if you look back at the previous time Jupiter was in Aries. Not to, again, this is not that I'm predicting it, but just look at what was happening around 99 into 2000 in particular. So here are the dates again: February 1999 to June, and then October 1999 to February of 2000. So if I go back into my bio, what's really interesting is I found some really similar themes and patterns. So I was in high school and I was in my 12th house again. I made the choice to follow a girlfriend to a religious school, a Baptist college, which was not where I was intending to go. But because I went there, it would lead me to start studying philosophy and theology. At the same time, my parents' marriage and their Christian faith was deteriorating. At least the way it had looked was deteriorating. And so it was this interesting time where a very important moment of, there was an important, like, it was like a world in between worlds. My faith and family's religious affiliation was sort of falling apart as they were going through really tough stuff. And yet I had fallen in love with this girl in high school, and we decided to go to college together. I was just in this religious school and I hadn't planned on being in one. And, I was a big youth group kid. I went to church all the time. I thought maybe I was even going to be a minister. So it wasn't like totally off script for me to go to a religious school, but this was a Baptist school, which is more conservative than what I probably would have envisioned for myself. Anyway, so I go to this school because my parents their marriage and their faith were like transforming / falling apart. I started questioning my own, started studying philosophy and theology. That path was such a liminal space for me. It was such a space of questioning and doubts and sort of trying to reconfigure my faith. So there's Jupiter in the 12th house. My faith was being questioned as I was, going to a, religious university. So I think that's really interesting. It's just, to me, just fascinating to see that they were these interlude periods that were unexpected, powerful, challenging, and led to really substantive developments in my life. And I mean, like, if it weren't for making those choices, in 99 into 2000 to study philosophy and theology, I definitely wouldn't be here today. Studying astrology, going off and drinking ayahuasca, because that was an extension of questioning my faith that started happening during that time. So it supplanted these seeds of exploration for me in the 12th house that ended up being, they were definitely heavy, but good ultimately. So anyway, I share these with you not to like sit here and, like, it's so important that you hear about my life, but because this is the kind of thing that I think if you hear someone else do, you can go back and then if you know what whole sign house it's landing in, it really helps to take a look at those previous Jupiter and Aries periods. So let's review them one more time. Most recent was June to September 2010 and January to June 2011. So take note, what was happening? What whole sign houses Aries occupy in your chart? And then February 99 to June 99, October 99 to February 2000, what was happening? Also, if you guys notice anything in the collective that fits the bill of Jupiter and Aries, please do share. I love hearing from you guys. It's always fun. And that's what I've got for today. This is just meant to sort of warm us up. The next step will be to look at, break down the thematic elements a little bit more. I've tried to give you some idea of what they are now, but we'll take a look at Jupiter and Aries a lot more in depth. We've got Jupiter and Mars conjoining in Aries. We're going to take a look at that and some historical examples of Jupiter and Mars conjoining in Aries, which are also interesting. And we're going to do some horoscopes for Jupiter and Aries as well. So we'll do those as the month progresses, but hopefully this kind of warms us up. Again, always appreciate it if you like and subscribe, share your comments, click on the notification bell for updates. You can find a transcript of today's talk on my website within 24 hours. Don't forget the new class, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, starts June 5th. Check out the need-based tuition option if you need a hand making it possible. You can find everything at nightlightastrology.com. And as always, any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. That's what I've got for today. Thanks, everyone.